Can't overstate it. Big day in boxing yesterday. Big day. As the title says, for better or for worse. If you're new here, welcome. Hope you enjoy your stay. I'm Bryan Fonseca. We talk about a lot of different sports on this channel, but primarily we lean on basketball and boxing, although it's been a lot of boxing lately because boxing don't know when to be quiet because they've been just making a lot of news. At the morning, we're talking about this, and we're going to talk about the TKO deal with Ring Magazine, and the Saudis and all that stuff that went down yesterday. This morning, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor 3 just got announced for Madison Square Garden in July. As somebody who is very invested in the best fighting the best, so to speak, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor 3 is going to be a good one. Okay, so we have a lot to get into, and we're going to try to do it in a reasonable amount of time. This should not be an hour. Hopefully this is like 30 something minutes. Hector's on the ones and twos. Follow Uptown Sports, Latino Sports, Uptown Sports TV, and Latino Sports on social media. He's going to help me produce because we have a lot of stuff to bring up. Hector, let's start with the Ring Magazine press release. Let's get right into it. TKO and the Saudis officially enter boxing with the new promotion, and here's sort of the details on that. I'm just going to switch myself so the press release is a little bit bigger. So we have it here, Ring Magazine. This is important that Ring Magazine is actually, getting into this with them posting the press release here. And at the beginning, I've never seen this before, where it says New York and Riyadh sort of in the front there, which that's very, very telling. But the fact that Ring Magazine is posting this is important because Turki Alalshikh, who is the Saudi advisor, who is the face of what they're doing in terms of boxing and combat sports in general in Saudi Arabia, he owns Ring Magazine. They own Ring Magazine. So they're going to want to get certain messaging across the way that they want to do it. That's going to be a theme throughout this as we discuss this. And if you watch this, come across this, like, comment, subscribe, all the different things, continue supporting the channel. So we have Turki Alalshikh and TKO announcing the launch of this new boxing promotion in partnership with Sela. Sela are, that's the Saudi group or whatever. That's His Excellency, which I will not refer to him as that at all after this, but that's what he is referred to at the top of this press release. So Turki Alalshikh, together with TKO Group Holdings, yada, yada, yada. They have announced a multi-year partnership to establish a new boxing promotion that will provide a premier platform for both leading boxers and prospects in the sport. The interesting piece of that to me, just right here at the bottom, if you see it, or top of the screen rather, those last two lines, prospects in the sport. Scroll up a little bit, Hector. Let's go back there real quick. The prospects part, just highlight that. The prospects part, that's interesting because there was like a promotional video that I heard Ariel Helwani talk about this, for example, and they were talking about Callum Walsh being sort of the face of it. Callum Walsh, for people who don't know, is an up and coming junior middleweight, and he is one of these guys who's been fighting like locally in New York City. He's getting pushed, but he's not regarded as like one of the top prospects in the sport. What he is somebody that this group could try to elevate. It sounds like they want to get in with prospects on the ground floor and try to get them at an early stage and develop them throughout their careers. Let's continue speaking on this significant milestone. And then Turki Alalshikh just gives, a PR quote here because, this is a press release after all. Landmark partnership, yada, 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 world-class events, etc. Mark Shapiro's involved. That's important. He's the president and chief operating officer of TKO. TKO, for people who don't know, probably should have mentioned this at the top. TKO owns UFC and WWE. And now they want boxing. They want to own and run all of combat sports. That's what they're in this for. And Mark Shapiro having a quote here, this is a strategic opportunity to reimagine the sport of boxing globally. Interesting buzzwords there being used. TKO has deep expertise, promotional prowess, and long-standing relationships. Turki Alalshikh and Sela share our passion and vision, blah, 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 blah. you've all read press releases before. You know this is gonna be boring as shit. This piece of it, for being honest. But Mark Shapiro, like him being involved is not a small thing. People, that's a name that's worth getting accustomed to. TKO will serve as managing partner, day-to-day operations, expertise, management, oversight of the promotion. And here we go with executive leadership anchored by UFC president and CEO Dana White and WWE president and TKO board member Nick Khan. Nick Khan, who was at CAA, who was a very powerful agent, very powerful agent at one point in his career, represented a lot of people that you've seen on ESPN and have seen move on from ESPN. Tony Khan, not Tony Khan. Tony Khan's the head of AEW. Nick Khan. Nick Khan is the person here who you need to get familiar with. Also, and then you have just them talking themselves up about Sela playing a pivotal role and yada yada yada. Let's go down a little bit more, Hector. We have more about, or is this the entire press release? Is this it? Okay, the new promotion will feature, here we go, a highly structured system to develop new talent. Look at that. Okay, so there we go. First bullet point. The new promotion will feature a highly structured, thank you for the highlighting, system to develop new talent from around the world, including athlete combines and academies. Again, they want to get in on the ground floor with some of the young talent and hone them at an early age and develop them at an early age, so to speak. So that is it's pretty significant because it tells you the direction that they want to go. It's like it's not just talent development; it's also just like an understanding that, like, are they going to realistically get how many guys are they realistically going to get that are like super established at this point, right? Like if you're Anthony Joshua, you're on the way out. If you're Terrence Crawford, you're almost done. Canelo Alvarez, like, they already have him on a deal anyway, not TKO, but the Saudis do. So like they want to obviously grow like the grassroots of boxing, I guess, out there. Next bullet. Access for all boxers to the UFC Performance Institute, the world's leading combat sports performance training, research, rehabilitation, and nutrition center featuring locations in Vegas, Mexico, and Shanghai. What do those places have in common? Just a lot of people go there. And a lot of people just be there all the time. Vegas is fight capital of the world for all intents and purposes. It has been for a while. It pains me as a New Yorker to say that, although we got some slaps coming up in this city. Mexico City, huge city. Obviously, and Mexico has amazing boxing history, which we talked about on the channel before. And then Shanghai, I mean, what needs to be said about in terms of population out there and opportunities, business opportunities in Shanghai. TKO's production, media, and promotional expertise at lip blah. That's that's filler. And then just more details. And then comments because the press release is over. Let's get to Hector, the one of the tweets. Let's get to one of the tweets. We'll work on putting that up because it's important to note what they want to highlight. So here we go. We have Ring Magazine, who again owns or is owned by Turki Alalshikh. And that's strategic too. Like the Saudis get together and they buy Ring Magazine. So like let's walk through that real quick. You can keep this up, Hector. Like the Saudis buying Ring Magazine is important because it tells you the message, like what they're trying to do in terms of influence, what they're trying to do in terms of coverage. Like they know how important Ring Magazine is. It's been a historical institution in boxing for, I don't know, 1,000 years or whatever it is. And what they're trying to do to sort of increase their influence is use the power of Ring Magazine and what that means and what that has meant for boxing fans historically. There's been talks about, are TKO going to have their own titles the same way that the WWE and the UFC has? And they might, but those might just be the Ring Magazine titles. They bought Ring Magazine. They don't really need to do anything else in terms of making a TKO championship or whatever it's going to be called. Like they could, but they already have Ring Magazine and they're using that. And look at what they did on Twitter to make their Twitter account more active. Michael Benson, who was the source for a lot of people in terms of like you would get your boxing news from him. He was a journalist out in the UK, I think, for TalkSport or whatever the case may be. Basically, like all the breaking news would get put on his account. Like anything that happened in boxing, he would attribute some of it. He would attribute, sometimes he wouldn't, and people would get pissed about that. His account was bought by Ring Magazine, and Ring Magazine is using his account. He's actually running their social right now. So that tells you the level of influence that they're looking to have, that Ring Magazine is looking to have through the Saudi regime, and how they're trying to control everything. They want to control the market. And look at what was highlighted here from, a couple things from yesterday at the time we recorded this. This is a quote from Turki Alalshikh. Says, "I am very happy today. I give the flag of boxing to the best man who can handle it, Dana White. He has a tough job, but I'm sure he will get boxing great again." Two things. One, in terms of giving the flag to Dana White, I don't think he's giving the flag to Dana White and getting out of the way. I think Dana White's there for a purpose, because he is seen as the best promoter in combat sports and has been for a while. Whether or not he actually is, we can talk about that, but he's seen as that. That's one. Two, I'm not sure anybody who says they will make something great again has ever made anything great again. So I'd be careful about that quote. I don't like the choice of words there. All right, what's the next quote that we have here? There was one more, I believe, and the second one was from Dana White himself. Dana White intends to bring the UFC. This is a big, cannot tell you how, like, this is so important. The model is proven, because he wants to bring the UFC model. This is him talking about specifically the UFC model, because that's what the tweet said. The model is proven to deliver the fights that the fans want to see. The best will fight the best. The fighters will move up the rankings to become world champions. Dana White says that. So they want to emulate the UFC model. And a lot of boxing fans are jumping to conclusions saying that means fighter pay is going to be shit, because a lot of the UFC fighters complain about pay or just heavily underpaid and all those different things. And the fact that they're starting with prospects, like, or want to heavily emphasize prospects and the growth of prospects, that could be worrisome too, because of what we're talking about here. And ultimately, I think there's a couple different things here. One, the UFC model is something that some boxing fans have wanted, because the sport is very just a little too open for some people. And a lot of people are over the alphabet titles. These guys want to get rid of the alphabet titles, which is the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, the WBO, the IBO, which is not like a real world title, but regardless, like there are other quotes about that we didn't even list about, like, them, wanting to get rid of those titles and say that they're not going to matter anymore, that those three letters aren't going to matter anymore, whatever the case may be. The actual promotions, or not the actual, well, we could talk about the actual promotions, but the actual sanctioning bodies, so the ones I just mentioned, those are the ones that I think are under fire the most. The promotions, I have some thoughts about that we'll get to. And one more thing I wanted to pull up here, or two more things actually. We have a Dana White quote, I believe. Not just the quote here, but we have him saying something. So let's make sure, we should have volume on that.
Boxing has become this thing where, you have to be undefeated.
This is from First Take. He was in a First Take appearance. I don't think that's a small thing either, by the way. Dana White and Turkey just sort of making the rounds on ESPN, as ESPN is getting reported that ESPN might not remain with Top Rank. And then all of a sudden this happens and ESPN has one of the first stories out. Let's play it. See what Dana White had.
Boxing has become this thing where, you have to be undefeated for people to care about you. And that's all going to go away. There's a lot of guys out there that we're looking at that are going to be in this roster that have a lot of O's behind there. They're all going to fight each other. And what people want to see are great fights. And they want to know who is the best in the world. And like I said, when you put the great fight, the other thing that we're going to do is my son just went to that show this weekend. He said the live event was terrible. You know, disorganized.
at Barclays?
Yeah,
Yeah.
disorganized, and we're going to clean that up. We're going to make the live events great again too. The run of show will run faster. You know, it won't take 9 hours to see 4 fights. You know, these guys put on a fight and then have a podcast, and then put on another fight and have a podcast. The show will run like UFC does.
What's going to
Podcast. Oh, that's funny. Couple things there. He's talking about Gervonta Tank Davis's fight against Lamont Roach. I was at that fight. He makes a valid point about the disorganization, although boxing in general has struggled with disorganization for a while. The press conference for the upcoming card that is promoted by Ring Magazine and the Saudis that is coming up in Times Square on May 2nd. That features, among others, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Jose Ramirez, Arna Barbosa, Teofimo Lopez, and why am I blanking on somebody else? Oh man, this is so disrespectful. But regardless, you know who's on the card if you're into boxing. If not, then you can look it up. But the point of it is that press conference was super disorganized also. And really what we're Rolly Romero. I knew the name was going to come to me. Probably is the worst resume out of everyone I just mentioned on the card. That's probably why. But shout out to Rolly. I just think like a couple different things here. With Dana White, he's saying that they want to make the best fight the best. I'm sure that's the goal or whatever. And that's what boxing fans want. But man, I just saw that Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev's rematch got 45,000 pay-per-view buys. That's a bad number. That's an objectively bad number. And this is a best fighting the best. Like these are two top 5, 7, 8 pound for pound guys. Legitimately. And like, I think for boxing fans, because this is what it's ultimately about, right? I guess boxing fans will care about that. But I wonder to what end, because this is going to look different now. And now we're just getting into one more piece of this. The Ali Act, which has become a topic of conversation. We'll pull that up also. The Ali Act, there are people who think this is in jeopardy. And what the Ali Act is, Hector, I think we have that also. That is to essentially protect, in a way, boxing in general. And what the Ali Act is, because there's been talks about it being like disbanded or whatever and what have you. MMA, they've tried to implement something like this to an extent. That's been fought against, and there's been money to fight against it. The Ali Act as well. Here we go. So we have the Ali Act here, the AI overview. Can we trust this? Are we sure we can trust the AI overlords on this one? But no, this is essentially what it is. So we'll go with it. AI overview. The Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act, also known as the Ali Act. It was a federal law that was passed in 2000. I think it was introduced in 1996, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been around for a bit. The purpose right here is to protect the rights of boxers, to help state boxing commissions regulate boxing, to increase sportsmanship and integrity in boxing, to reform unfair and anti-competitive practices. And to be honest with you, has it done a good job, or not it, but have people done a good job of, I guess, like really using these points to strengthen boxing, really using these points to sort of protect the sport and protect the fighters? No, not really. And this is ultimately what it comes down to. Boxing itself, and we could leave it up, boxing itself has really opened itself up for somebody to come and take over because of the constant disorganization between all the different organizations who are involved in the sport, like the WBC and the WBO and the WBA and the IBF. Like, all of these sanctioning bodies failed to really push the sport forward at the end of the day. The promotional companies themselves, as in Matchroom Boxing, Top Rank, Queensberry Promotions, all these different Golden Boy, all these different premier boxing champions organizations have really struggled to put together fights. Not necessarily that like the best fighting the best or whatever the case may be, that too, but more so fights that cross over, because there are only a couple of times within a calendar year that fights truly cross over in that way. And you really have only a couple guys in the sport that make waves in that way. When Canelo Alvarez fights, it's an event. Although I feel like, admittedly, less so now than maybe in previous years, but I still feel like it's an event. I don't know how much of an event him fighting William Skull in Saudi Arabia is, but that's going to happen in May. And if you look at Gervonta Davis, his fights are an event. Otherwise, like, I'm in my boxing bubble, so I'm invested in all of these dudes I'm talking about in terms of watching them, how they perform, covering them from a professional standpoint, from an analyst standpoint, reporting standpoint, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, like, I'm an outlier in that regard. And all of my friends who casually watch boxing, like, they're not tuning in to see a lot of the guys that I would tune in to see. And I wonder how much this is going to impact that as well. So the Ali Act is something that people think is going to be under fire, so to speak. And then you have like just the Congress piece of it here down low, and its potential ramifications. And I think this is going to be fought against because they just want to have more leeway. But honestly, we're at an era now where billionaires and people with a lot of money and influence are just going to look at shit like this and be like, all right, I don't care. I'm just going to do what I want still, and try to stop me. I think that's ultimately what this is going to be. So we'll give a couple of closing thoughts. But one, I think boxing just allowed itself to be open to this kind of thing. And now what's going to happen is, like, I find it real interesting that Top Rank, that deal is coming up and this is getting announced. And it's like, all right, there's your Top Rank replacement. If we're sort of reading through the tea leaves here, like, would you be shocked if ESPN gets this deal? Hell no. I think ESPN is probably going to get their piece of this. They might even get all of it. Who knows? But I think ESPN, maybe Netflix, like some of the big networks, they're going to be in bed with this because that's what Dana White is there for. And that's what Turkey's money is ultimately there for. As far as what happens to the other promotions, like what happens to Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya and Frank Warren, who have been, and Bob Arum even, who have been, and Bob Arum's in his literal 90s, but still, they've been working with the Saudis to put on some of these big fights. So is this a backstabbing? I'd be surprised if that's the case. I wouldn't be that surprised. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what's going to happen is they'll probably just get folded into this. They'll probably like act as maybe the promoters, so to speak, or have jobs within all this going on. I'd be surprised if he puts like Matchroom and Queensberry out of business after working with Eddie Hearn and all these dudes. I think eventually, though, the promotional companies, like, they're in trouble. I don't think they're in as much trouble as the sanctioning bodies are, but they're in trouble. And I think this is also going to take a while because if they're starting with prospects, then yeah, like we're not going to see the total ramifications of this for some time. There's been talk about them putting on just a couple of events within the next, I don't know, year and change or whatever the case may be. And then you also have like why is why are they talking so much about prospects? It's because they have like a vision here for like long term. And in boxing, a lot of people don't have vision here. So for better or for worse, this is sort of the future here. I think we're good on the screen here. Heck, thank you. For better or for worse, this is where we're sort of at. All right, couple talking points that we'll get out of here. And we do have just a lot of things that we don't fully know yet because they haven't been reported, they haven't been announced, and what have you. Like, this is just what it is in this game. Like, they're going to tell us what they want to tell us, and boxing only has but so many reporters who will cover these guys like in an in a in an objective way. They bought Ring Magazine and effectively bought a lot of the reporters and favorability of the media. Like dudes are not going to talk shit about these guys. Um, or whatever, and or not even talk shit about, but just cover them like super fairly. Like it'll be favorable in a lot of different regards. So I think in terms of the start of this, like you'll see them get involved with Terrence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez, that fight, maybe a couple other super fights, maybe the trilogy between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, who knows? But I think it's going to start off great for people who are interested in the micro, the small doses, the people who just want to see, who just like consume boxing in terms of, look, I work from 11 to 7. I don't have time to get into the nuts and bolts. I listen to a couple shows or whatever. And like, I just want to see the best fight the best. I think for you, like, you're probably going to love the beginning of this because you're probably going to get what you want initially. You'll have big names fighting each other. You'll have people putting it on the line because there's going to be so much money involved at the start. That we're going to see a continuation of what we've been seeing, which a lot of people like. A lot of people like what the Saudis have been doing in terms of the actual boxing piece of it. And they've given us some good fights, but there've also been some fights and some cards that I think have been highly overrated, like the supposed greatest card ever that we got. What was it, last week or the week before? The week before, it was 2 weeks ago. If you look at the card and even before the injuries, like it's a good card, but also we were talking about this on the mandatory with Bryan and Chantel, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later today as well. Like, if you look at the card itself, like there were a couple good fights on there, but I wouldn't call it the greatest card ever. We've had some really good cards in boxing. If you go look at the 80s and you have like, a whole bunch of champions fighting on the same card, and champions who were like legitimately legendary, legitimate Hall of Famers. But come on, what are we doing? Boxing is too much of a history to say that something we're doing in 2025 is the greatest ever. Like just right off the bat, like we got to stop doing that. So boxing's going to have their own UFC model. What does this mean? People want centralization, and I think this could become a be careful what you wish for situation, because they're going to centralize things under one brand, one banner, one promotion. You're going to get guys fighting each other, but all these big payments, there's a ceiling, there's a cap to that. As much money as the Saudis have, because they're spending a lot of money to put these fights together, like a lot, legitimately a lot. As much money as they have, like they're not going to keep doing that. I really doubt that they're going to keep spending a lot of their fortune on just like not getting much of a return. And I think this way with the league, if you're really going to adapt the UFC model is kind of like a sports book where the house always wins. The house gets whatever it's going to get, like a large percentage, and the fighters, fight for the rest, literally. Like if we're eventually getting to that, yeah, the pay structure is going to change drastically. Part of the problem with boxing, some would argue, is that a lot of boxers get overpaid, to fight like once or twice a year. And if they're going to be more active fighting less, but like this is just how businesses go. And there's another reason why they're targeting, like there's this heavy emphasis on prospects. There's this heavy emphasis on prospects because if you're starting a business, period, like if you're starting a business, you're going to target entry level employees at first, because you're going to try to want to save some measure of money or not spend that much money. Like this is the emphasis on prospects. They're going to want to target entry level employees so that they wouldn't be that much of an investment. It'll be an investment over time, but if you're having them fight each other, you're going to wheedle out whoever's not good enough, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like if you bring in a prospect who's 13-0 and they lose twice to other prospects and they're 13-2, you could just get them out of here. Like this is what the UFC does. Like this is why they have people. This is why Dana White has a contender series. A contender series because, all right, you give people an opportunity. If they look good, you give them more of an opportunity on the actual UFC stage. And then you just sort of break it down. And then eventually, like, this is what it is. But they want to monopolize it. Like the way in mixed martial arts, people don't even refer to mixed martial arts as mixed martial arts. A lot of people refer to it as UFC. Like, yo, do you do UFC instead of do you do MMA? Like, that's a thing. Same thing with wrestling. A lot of people refer to wrestling, all of wrestling, as WWE. They're not thinking about New Japan Pro Wrestling. They're not thinking about AEW. They're not thinking about like any of these indie promotions. Like, you know, shout out to Ring of Honor, who AEW actually owns now. Like, that's probably what they're looking at with boxing. Like, they want this TKO thing to become that. And TKO wants to run combat sports. So it's not like it's not like the worst thing in the world, I guess, if you don't really care like that. But if you've been paying attention to the history of boxing, I'm not sure this is what you want, because then what happens is, with UFC rising to what it's becoming, like, Bellator is basically dead, PFL is dying, Strikeforce is gone, Pride is gone. You have a little bit of a regional scene, but it's kind of UFC or nothing. There's one championship, but like, you get the point. And then in wrestling, the indie scene is not what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago at all. If you follow, like, Ring of Honor, Chikara, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? I'm not even gonna Dragon Gate, House of Glory. I know a little bit more wrestling than I let on, but like, with boxing, it's like, maybe that's eventually where Top Rank goes. That's eventually where some of these other brands go. But yeah, some stuff is going to die off, and then it'll be funneled through like TKO or whatever the case may be, and we'll see how that looks. But the Saudis want all of it. You don't do this if you don't want all of it. PBC is less active than they used to be also, and unfortunately, we could see where that might be headed. Amazon doesn't seem to prioritize it in that way, not nearly as much as Showtime. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens to the promoters and all these different things. And also, what nobody else is talking about, are the women going to be involved? We have some really good women who box in the sport. We just talked about at the top of this, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. Like, are any of these women going to be involved in this? Clarissa Shields tweeted at Turki Alalshikh, talking about, hey, why don't you put women's fights in Saudi Arabia? He just kind of, like, I don't know if he liked it or whatever, but I mean, we kind of know why that is, right? Don't we? I think something needs to be done about that. So this is just what it is. And boxing's instability and disorganization allowed this to happen. In this business, and in any business, increasingly in this country and perhaps the world, the top 1% are going to get richer. The middle class is going to have to fight for crumbs, and then the lower class is going to get screwed. So the top 1% of fighters, I'm sure, will continue to get a lot of the money. The lower class of fighters who already struggle, it's going to be tough. And the middle class of fighters are going to fight for what's left. And a lot of people are going to get squeezed out, and we'll see what happens there. And a lot of staffers, like, there are people who work at some of these promotions who just work on staffs or whatever. If this does take over, because typically what happens is, like, one business takes over the industry, and then a lot of other people are out of jobs. Like, when mergers happen, people lose jobs. When when there's one strong brand that takes over, like, yes, other people lose jobs. So that's going to be happening too. And the way boxing was going, this was probably always its destiny for somebody to come and take it over. And we'll see. I'm highly skeptical. I have a healthy amount of skepticism about this long term. I think short term is going to look good for a lot of people. I think long term, we'll see. But we've gotten, over the years, a lot of title fights that nobody's asked for. We still get that sometimes. We get weird mandatory situations where, some mandatories get forced and some don't. We have organizations with multiple titles, the WBA. We have interim titles for no reason sometimes. We have bad judging, rankings that are questionable and unfair, and overall just an unsteady infrastructure. And people think that the Saudis are going to come in and fix it. I just think they're going to do it their own way, and we'll see if it actually helps the sport or if it just sends it into a tailspin. But there are going to be parts of this that people enjoy that are going to look good, And then there are going to be parts of it where it's going to have long-term effects that people can't see now, but that may, that may hurt. But I think there are going to be a lot of fans who are celebrating today because they think they want this, and I believe when they see what actually comes from this, it's not going to be what they think, or they might not care, So here comes the structure, and it comes with the price, and that price is dripping in oil money. So that's sort of where we're at. I think we're good. I think we could end the stream. That's it. That's all I got.